The desert sun beat down mercilessly on the Sage County Fairgrounds, turning the packed dirt into a shimmering mirror of heat. Dust devils spun lazy circles between the livestock pens, and the air tasted of salt and dry grass. Inside the auction ring, a wild mustang mare with legs that twisted at unnatural angles struggled to stand as the crowd erupted in cruel laughter. Her coat, the color of dying embers, was matted with sweat and fear. No one bid. No one cared. Everyone turned away, except for a 16-year-old girl named Maya Rodriguez who clutched $200 in her pocket, money that was supposed to pay for textbooks and groceries. What happened next would silence an entire town and prove that sometimes the most broken things hold the strongest fire. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Nevada sky stretched endlessly above Sage County, a pale blue canvas bleached almost white by the relentless August sun. Maya Rodriguez stood at the edge of the fairgrounds parking lot, her worn sneakers sinking slightly into gravel that radiated heat like a stovetop. She had not planned to come here today. The county auction was for ranchers, for people with money and land and futures that looked nothing like hers. But her boss at Route 50 Diner had mentioned it casually while Maya wiped down tables that morning. Said there might be some older tack going cheap, maybe something she could fix up and resell. Maya needed every dollar she could scrape together. Her father's construction work had dried up for the season, and Abuela Rosa's medication costs more each month. So she came, even though the fairgrounds made her stomach tight with memories of her mother laughing at the Ferris wheel 2 years ago, back when laughter still lived in their house. The auction ring sat in the center of the grounds, surrounded by wooden bleachers that creaked under the weight of farmers in pressed denim and boots polished to a high shine. Pickup trucks lined the perimeter, their beds loaded with empty livestock trailers waiting to be filled. The smell of manure mixed with kettle corn from a vendor cart, and somewhere a mariachi band played from tinny speakers, the music bouncing off metal roofs. Maya moved through the crowd like a shadow, keeping to the edges where the dust was thickest and the attention thinnest. She was good at being invisible. At Desert Vista High School, she had perfected the art of sliding through hallways unnoticed, of eating lunch in the library, of avoiding the groups of girls who whispered behind manicured hands. Jessica Hartwell and her friends, with their riding boots that cost more than Maya's entire wardrobe, made sure Maya knew she did not belong in their world of weekend horse shows and private trainers. The auctioneer's voice boomed through the speakers, a rhythmic chant that rose and fell like a twisted prayer. Maya found a spot near the rail where she could see without being seen. Horses paraded through the ring one after another, each one more polished than the last. A bay gelding with a star on his forehead went for $3,500. A Palomino mare with a flowing mane drew gasps and sold for twice that. The buyers leaned forward in their seats, calculators in hand, weighing bloodlines and potential like merchants at a marketplace. Maya watched their faces, the way they assessed each animal with cold precision, and felt something sour rise in her throat. These were not people looking for companions. They were looking for investments. Then the energy in the ring shifted. The murmur of conversation died down to whispers, and several people near the front began to laugh. Maya stood on her toes to see over the shoulder of a man in a white Stetson. What she saw made her breath catch. A small mustang mare was being led into the ring by 2 handlers who struggled to keep her upright. The horse's coat was the deep russet of cooling embers, but it was matted with dirt and burrs. Her mane hung in tangled ropes, and her ribs showed through her sides like the bars of a cage. But it was her legs that drew the cruelest attention. Both front legs twisted inward from the knees, the bones clearly malformed, giving her a knock-kneed stance that looked painful even from a distance. Each step she took seemed to require a negotiation with gravity, her hooves dragging slightly in the dirt as she fought to maintain balance. Someone in the crowd let out a low whistle. Another voice called out, asking if they were auctioning off dog food now. Laughter rippled through the bleachers, sharp and cutting. The auctioneer cleared his throat, his voice losing some of its earlier enthusiasm. "All right, folks, we've got a young mare here, about 4 years old, came in from the Bureau of Land Management roundup. She's got some confirmation issues, as you can see, but she's healthy otherwise. Let's start the bidding at $500. Silence fell like a curtain. The auctioneer tried again, his voice strained. For 103? The handler stood in the center of the ring, holding the mare's lead rope while she trembled. Her eyes, dark and liquid, darted around the arena as if searching for an escape that did not exist. Maya could see the whites showing, the universal sign of a terrified horse. The mare's nostrils flared with each rapid breath, and her tail clamped tight against her hindquarters. 200. The auctioneer offered, desperation creeping into his voice. Come on now, she'd make a decent pasture pet. More laughter. A woman near Maya muttered to her husband that it would be kinder to put the poor thing down. Maya's hands curled into fists at her sides. She knew what happened to horses that did not sell at auction. They went to kill buyers, loaded onto trailers headed for slaughterhouses across the border. The thought made her feel sick. She looked at the mare again, at the way she held her twisted legs with a kind of stubborn dignity despite the pain that must have accompanied every movement. There was something in the set of the horse's head, in the way she refused to drop her gaze even as the crowd mocked her, that reminded Maya of staring at herself in the bathroom mirror on the bad days. The days when the weight of her mother's absence felt too heavy to carry. The days when the bills stacked up faster than her diner tips could cover them. The days when being invisible felt less like a choice and more like a verdict. The auctioneer sighed heavily. $100, final offer. Going once. Maya's hand moved before her brain could catch up. She raised it high above her head, fingers spread wide so there could be no mistaking the gesture. The auctioneer paused mid-sentence, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found her. The young lady in the back. Do I have 100? Maya nodded, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack a rib. The auctioneer's gavel hovered, going once, going twice. He paused, giving the crowd one last chance to save the mare from whatever fate Maya represented. No one moved. Sold to the young lady for $100. The crack of the gavel echoed like a gunshot. The crowd immediately lost interest, conversations resuming as the next horse was led in. But Maya stood frozen, her raised hand slowly lowering as the reality of what she had just done crashed over her. $100. Half of everything she had saved. Money that was supposed to stretch through textbooks and groceries and the electricity bill. Money she could not afford to spend on a lame Mustang that nobody wanted. She felt dizzy, the heat and shock combining to make the world tilt slightly. What had she done? But then she looked at the mare again, saw one of the handlers roughly jerk. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The lead rope to turn her toward the exit gate, and something in Maya's chest solidified. She had made her choice. Now she had to see it through. Maya pushed through the crowd toward the payment booth, a small wooden structure that smelled of old coffee and cigarette smoke. The woman behind the counter barely looked up as Maya counted out 5 $20 bills with shaking hands. The woman stamped a receipt and pointed toward the holding pens behind the main arena. Pen 7, she said in a bored voice. You got a trailer? Maya shook her head. The woman's eyebrow raised slightly, the first sign of interest she had shown. How you planning to get her home? Maya swallowed hard. I'll walk her. It's not far. The woman snorted but said nothing else. Maya took the receipt and the mare's papers, thin and wrinkled, listing her only as Mustang mare, BLM tag 4721. No name, no history, just a number that indicated she had once run free in the mountains before being rounded up and deemed unsuitable for adoption. Pen 7 was at the far end of the holding area, separated from the nicer horses by distance and indifference. Maya approached slowly, her footsteps crunching on the gravel. The mare stood in the corner of the pen, as far from the gate as possible, her body pressed against the metal rails. She did not run when Maya opened the gate. She simply watched, ears pinned flat against her skull, every muscle tense. Maya stopped just inside the pen, giving the horse space. Up close, the mare looked even worse. Scratches crisscrossed her legs and flanks, some fresh and weeping, others scabbed over. Her hooves were overgrown and chipped, desperately needing the attention of a farrier. But it was her eyes that held Maya's attention. They were not broken. Despite everything, despite the twisted legs and the rough handling and the laughter, those eyes still held fire. Maya crouched down slowly, making herself smaller, less threatening. She had learned this from the horses at the stable where she sometimes worked weekends, mucking stalls and hauling water for minimum wage. Horses responded to body language more than words. She kept her gaze soft, not making direct eye contact, and spoke in a low voice that barely carried over the sound of the auction continuing in the distance. "Hey there," she murmured. "I know you're scared. I know this whole thing has been terrible. But I'm not going to hurt you. Promise." The mare's ears flicked forward slightly, then back again. She snorted, a sharp sound of distrust. Maya stayed still, letting the horse process her presence. Minutes passed. The sun beat down, turning the metal pen into an oven. Sweat dripped down Maya's back, soaking through her thin t-shirt. She did not move. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes, the mare took a single step forward. Then another. Her twisted legs made the movement awkward, each step carefully calculated. She stretched her neck out, nostrils flaring as she scented Maya's outstretched hand. Maya held her breath. The mare's muzzle, soft as velvet, brushed against her palm. And in that moment, something passed between them. It was not magic. It was not some mystical connection that solved all problems. It was simpler and more profound than that. It was recognition. Girl and horse, both damaged, both dismissed, both still standing. The mare exhaled, warm breath ghosting over Maya's skin, and some of the tension left her frame. Maya reached up slowly, so slowly, and rested her hand against the mare's neck. The coat was rough with dirt and dried sweat, but underneath she could feel the heat of life, the steady thrum of a heart that refused to quit. "I'm going to call you Ember," Maya whispered, "because you look like fire that everyone thinks has gone out. But I can still see the heat." The mare's ear swiveled toward her voice. Maya stood gradually, keeping her hand on Ember's neck, and reached for the frayed lead rope that hung from the makeshift halter. Ember tensed but did not pull away. "Okay," Maya said, more to herself than to the horse. "Let's go home." The walk from the fairgrounds to the Rodriguez property was just over 3 miles, but it felt like 30. Maya led Ember slowly, matching her pace to the mare's labored gait. Each step Ember took seemed to cost her, the twisted legs forcing her to swing each hoof outward before planting it. Several times she stumbled, and Maya had to steady her, bracing her own weight against the horse's shoulder. Cars passed them on Route 50, some slowing down to stare, others honking as if the sight of a teenage girl leading a lame horse down the highway shoulder was the funniest thing they had seen all week. By the time they turned onto the dusty road that led to her house, the sun had begun its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple. Maya's legs ached, her throat was parched, and her hands were raw from gripping the lead rope. But Ember was still walking, still pushing forward despite the pain that must have been screaming through her malformed legs. The Rodriguez homestead appeared like a mirage through the heat shimmer. The small adobe house with its faded blue trim and cracked stucco walls sat in the center of 5 acres of scrubland. An ancient cottonwood tree provided the only real shade, its branches stretching over a patch of dirt that had once been a garden when Maya's mother was alive. The corral, built from stacked stone and weathered wood, leaned slightly to one side, held together more by habit than structural integrity. A rusty windmill turned slowly in the evening breeze, squeaking with each rotation. Maya led Ember through the gate and into the yard just as the front door burst open. Carlos, her 8-year-old brother, came flying out, his too long hair flopping in his eyes, his bare feet kicking up dust. "Maya, Maya, you got a horse." His voice carried the pure, uncomplicated joy of childhood, the kind of excitement that had no room for questions about money or practicality. He skidded to a stop a few feet away, his eyes going wide as he took in Ember's condition. "Why are her legs like that? Is she okay? Can I pet her?" Maya held up a hand. "Slow down, Carlos. Yes, you can pet her, but you need to be gentle and quiet. She's had a really hard day." Carlos nodded seriously, his face transforming into an expression of exaggerated care. He approached Ember with the reverence usually reserved for Christmas morning, his small hand reaching out to touch her dusty shoulder. Ember's ears pricked forward, and she lowered her head to investigate this small human who smelled of peanut butter and sunshine. The screen door creaked again, and Abuela Rosa emerged onto the porch. Maya's grandmother was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she carried herself with the kind of dignity that made her seem much larger. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore one of her flower print dresses that she somehow kept pristine despite cooking and cleaning all day. Her face, lined with 70 years of laughter and sorrow, went carefully neutral as she took in the scene before her. "Maya Rodriguez," she said, her accent turning the words into music. "What have you brought to my house?" Maya led Ember closer to the porch, acutely aware of how the horse must look, how crazy this whole situation appeared. "Abuela, this is Ember. I bought her at the auction. She was going to be killed if nobody took her." The words spilled out in a rush, defensive and pleading at once. Abuela Rosa descended the porch steps slowly, her keen eyes scanning Ember from nose to tail. She walked around the mare in a complete circle, taking in the twisted legs, the malnourished body, the wild fear still evident in the horse's posture. Maya held her breath, waiting for the lecture she knew was coming. "How much?" Abuela asked quietly. $100, Maya admitted. Her grandmother closed her eyes briefly, and Maya saw her lips move in what might have been a prayer or might have been a curse. "That was your book money, Mija. That was supposed to last you through the semester." "I know," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Abuela, nobody wanted her. They were laughing at her. And when I looked at her, I saw." She trailed off, unable to articulate the connection she had felt in that dusty auction ring. Abuela Rosa was silent for a long moment, her weathered hand reaching out to stroke Ember's neck. The mare stood very still, as if understanding she was being evaluated. Finally, Maya's grandmother sighed, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. "Your mother, God rest her, she would have done the same foolish thing." She looked at Maya then, and there was something soft in her eyes despite the worry etched around them. "But Mija, love is not enough to feed a horse. Do you understand what you have taken on? Hay costs money. The veterinarian costs money. The farrier costs money. We barely have enough for ourselves." Maya nodded, tears burning behind her eyes but refusing to fall. "I'll work extra shifts at the diner. I'll do anything. I won't let her suffer because of me. Promise." Carlos piped up from where he was still petting Ember's shoulder. "I can help too. I'll give her my allowance." His allowance was $2 a week for taking out the trash, but the sincerity in his voice made Maya's throat tighten. Abuela Rosa looked at her grandson, then at her granddaughter, then at the broken mustang standing in their dusty yard. She shook her head slowly, but there was the ghost of a smile at the corner of her mouth. "We are all fools in this family," she muttered. "Come, bring her to the corral. She will need water and something to eat. We will figure out the rest tomorrow." Relief flooded through Maya so suddenly her knees went weak. She led Ember toward the stone corral, Carlos dancing alongside them, already chattering about how he was going to teach the horse tricks and how they would be best friends. The corral had not housed an animal in years, not since the neighbor's goat had stayed there briefly when Maya was small. The wooden rails were splintered in places, and the water trough was filled with dead leaves and debris. But it would have to do. Maya tied Ember loosely to one of the sturdier posts and set about cleaning the trough while Carlos ran to get the hose. Abuela Rosa disappeared into the house and returned with half a bale of hay they had bought months ago for mulching the garden. It was old and dusty, but Ember fell on it like she had not eaten in days, which she probably had not. Maya filled the trough with fresh water, and the mare plunged her muzzle in, drinking so deeply Maya worried she would make herself sick. "Slow down," Maya murmured, pulling the trough away for a moment. "You'll get more, I promise." Ember raised her dripping muzzle and looked at Maya with those dark eyes, and for the first time, there was something other than fear in them. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of hope. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon and the desert began to cool, Maya sat on the ground outside the corral with her back against the stone wall. Carlos had been called in for dinner, and Abuela Rosa had gone back to the kitchen, leaving Maya alone with Ember. The mare stood in the center of the corral, head lowered, finally allowing herself to rest. Her twisted legs were planted firmly in the dirt, bearing her weight in a way that must have been exhausting but that she managed with quiet determination. Maya watched her in the fading light and felt something shift inside her chest. She had no idea how they were going to make this work. She had no illusions about the challenges ahead. But sitting there in the cooling desert air, with the windmill squeaking its rusty song and the first stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, Maya allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had not made a terrible mistake. Maybe she had made the first right choice in a long time. Maybe saving Ember was actually about saving herself. The desert wakes differently than other places. There is no gentle transition from night to day, no soft blurring of edges. Instead, darkness holds firm until the sun breaks the horizon like a knife slash, and suddenly the world is awash in copper light that turns everything sharp and defined. Maya had forgotten to close her curtains the night before, and the sunrise hit her face with the subtlety of a slap. She groaned, rolling over to check her phone. 5:30 in the morning. She had barely slept, her mind churning through calculations of hay costs and veterinary bills, of how many extra shifts she could possibly work at the diner without failing her classes. Her bedroom was small, barely large enough for the twin bed and the pressboard dresser that had belonged to her mother. The walls were still painted the pale yellow her mother had chosen when Maya was 10, back when yellow meant sunshine and happiness instead of aged paint that needed refreshing. A single poster hung above her desk, a photograph of wild mustangs running across a mountain meadow, their manes flying, completely free. Maya had bought it at a school book fair years ago, drawn to something she could not name at the time. Now, with Ember standing in the corral outside, the poster felt less like decoration and more like prophecy. She dressed quickly in jeans worn soft at the knees and a tank top that had seen better days, then padded quietly down the hallway. The house was still silent, though she could hear Abuela Rosa's soft snoring through the closed door of the front bedroom. Carlos's door was plastered with drawings he had made, wild crayon horses with legs like stilts and smiles that stretched across their entire faces. He had stayed up past his bedtime drawing them, explaining to Maya in exhaustive detail how Ember was going to be the fastest horse in Nevada once her legs got better. Maya had not had the heart to explain that twisted legs did not simply get better, that the deformity Ember carried was likely permanent, the result of either genetics or injury in the womb or malnutrition during critical growth periods. The kitchen linoleum was cool under her bare feet. Maya filled a glass with water from the tap and drank it standing at the sink, looking out the window toward the corral. She could just make out Ember's silhouette in the pre-dawn gray, standing in the same spot where she had been when Maya had checked on her at midnight. The mare had not laid down to sleep, probably too afraid or too uncomfortable. Maya's chest tightened at the thought. She rinsed the glass, set it in the dish drainer, and slipped out the back door. The morning air was still cool, a temporary reprieve before the heat returned with its usual vengeance. Maya's footsteps crunched across the hard-packed dirt of the yard, and Ember's head came up immediately, ears swiveling toward the sound. The mare's body tensed, ready to flee despite having nowhere to go. Maya stopped several feet from the corral fence, giving Ember space to assess her. "Good morning," she said softly. The mare snorted, a sharp exhalation that spoke of nerves rather than greeting. Maya approached the fence slowly, resting her arms on the top rail. Ember watched her with those dark, liquid eyes that seemed too large for her narrow face. The morning light revealed details Maya had not noticed in yesterday's chaos. There was a scar running along Ember's right shoulder, pale against the russet coat, and another across her muzzle. Her mane was so tangled it had formed into thick ropes that hung like dreadlocks, and her tail was matted with burrs that would take hours to remove. But it was her legs that drew Maya's attention again and again. In the clear morning light, the deformity was even more pronounced. Both front legs bowed inward from the knee, the cannon bones curved in a way that defied the straight, clean lines of proper equine conformation. Maya had seen enough horses at the stables where she worked to recognize just how wrong Ember's structure was. The mare's hooves turned slightly inward as well, pigeon-toed, and the wear patterns on them suggested she had been compensating for the misalignment her entire life. Standing still, Ember kept her weight shifted slightly backward, taking pressure off those compromised front legs. It must have been exhausting, a constant conscious effort just to exist in a body that fought against itself. Maya climbed over the fence rather than opening the gate, not wanting the squeak of hinges to startle the mare. She dropped into the corral and stood still, letting Ember decide whether to approach or retreat. The mare did neither. She simply stood, watching, calculating. Maya could almost see the thoughts moving behind those eyes. Was this human a threat? Would she bring pain or relief? Could she be trusted? Or was trust a luxury wild things could not afford? Minutes stretched like taffy in the desert heat that was already beginning to build. A lizard scurried across the top of the stone wall, pausing to do push-ups before disappearing into a crevice. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed, the sound carrying across the open land. Maya's legs began to ache from standing so still, but she did not move. This was Ember's time, Ember's choice. Finally, the mare took a single step forward, then another. Each movement was deliberate, careful, as if the ground might give way beneath her at any moment. She approached Maya with her head low, neck stretched out, ready to wheel away at the first sign of danger. Maya kept her hands at her sides, resisting the urge to reach out. Ember stopped just beyond arm's length, her nostrils flaring as she drew in Maya's scent. The girl smelled of cheap shampoo and the lavender soap Abuela Rosa made from plants in the garden, of sweat and sleep and something else, something that might have been fear or might have been hope. They smelled remarkably similar. The mare took one more step, close enough now that Maya could see the individual lashes around her eyes, could count the small scars that peppered her face. Ember's muzzle extended, whiskers twitching, until it made contact with Maya's shoulder. The touch was feather-light, inquiring. Maya exhaled slowly, keeping her body language soft and open. "Hey there," she murmured. "You made it through the night. That's something." Ember's ears flicked at the sound of her voice. The mare investigated Maya's shoulder, then moved to her neck, her hair, breathing in the information that scent could provide. This human was young. This human was alone. This human carried the smell of other horses on her clothes, which meant she understood the language of hoofbeats and hay. Maya raised her hand very slowly, telegraphing every movement. Ember's head shot up, and for a moment Maya thought the mare would bolt. But after a tense second, Ember lowered her head again, allowing Maya's hand to make contact with her neck. The coat was rough with dirt and dried sweat, matted in places where old injuries had healed and hair had grown back in strange patterns. Maya stroked gently, her touch as light as she could make it while still making contact. Ember trembled but did not move away. They stood like that as the sun climbed higher, as the desert around them began to shimmer with heat, as the world woke and went about its business of surviving. Girl and horse, two creatures learning the first and hardest lesson of trust, which is simply this: to stand still and allow yourself to be seen. The sound of the screen door banging broke the spell. Carlos came tumbling out of the house, already talking at full volume despite the early hour. "Maya, is she okay? Did she sleep? Can I give her breakfast?" His voice carried across the yard like a siren, and Ember spooked hard, wheeling away from Maya with a violence that spoke of instincts honed by predators and danger. The mare's twisted legs nearly betrayed her, one hoof catching on the uneven ground, and she stumbled badly before catching herself against the far wall of the corral. Maya's heart lurched into her throat. "Carlos," she called, trying to keep her voice calm, despite the spike of adrenaline. "You need to be quiet around her. Okay? She scares easy." Carlos skidded to a stop at the corral fence, his face falling. "I'm sorry," he whispered, as if volume could be retroactively adjusted. "I didn't mean to scare her." Maya walked over to where he stood, ruffling his hair. "I know, Hermanito, but Ember's not like the horses you see at the fair. She's wild, and wild things need time to learn that not everything is dangerous." Carlos nodded solemnly, his eyes tracking Ember's position against the far wall. She's shaking, he observed. Maya looked at the mare, saw the tremors running through her body, saw the whites of her eyes showing again. Yeah, she said quietly. She is. They stood together at the fence, giving Ember space to calm down. After a few minutes, Carlos spoke again, his voice small. Did someone hurt her? Before we got her, I mean, is that why she's so scared? Maya considered how to answer. The truth was complicated, full of nuances an 8-year-old might not fully grasp. But Carlos deserved honesty, not fairy tales. Probably, she said finally. Wild horses get rounded up by helicopters sometimes, chased for miles until they're exhausted and terrified. Then they get shoved into pens with dozens of other scared horses, and people poke at them and move them around like objects. Even if nobody hit her or was deliberately cruel, the whole experience is traumatic. Plus, with her legs like that, she probably got bullied by the other horses. Horses can be mean to the ones who are different. Carlos processed this information with the seriousness he usually reserved for his favorite documentaries. That's not fair, he concluded. She didn't choose to have twisted legs. Maya smiled despite everything. No, she didn't. But life isn't always fair, Carlos. Sometimes you just have to play the hand you're dealt and make the best of it. Abuela Rosa appeared on the porch, already dressed in her daily uniform of a cotton dress and an apron, her hair in its customary bun. She surveyed the scene with the practiced eye of someone who had raised children and buried a husband and survived more hardships than she would ever speak of. Carlos, she called, come eat breakfast. You too, Maya. The horse will not disappear if you stop watching her for 10 minutes. Maya wanted to protest, wanted to stay with Ember and continue the slow work of building trust. But she also knew better than to argue with her grandmother before breakfast. She gave Ember one last look, the mare still pressed against the far wall, still trembling slightly. I'll be back, Maya said softly, though she was not sure if she was speaking to the horse or to herself. The kitchen smelled of coffee and fresh tortillas, the scent so familiar it made Maya's chest ache with memories of her mother standing at that same stove, humming under her breath while she cooked. Abuela Rosa moved through the space with practiced efficiency, flipping tortillas on the comal, scrambling eggs with chorizo, pouring orange juice into mismatched glasses. Carlos climbed onto his chair and immediately launched into a detailed plan for Ember's care that involved mostly him feeding her carrots and teaching her to do tricks. Abuela Rosa listened with half an ear while she served the food, her lips twitching with suppressed amusement. Maya ate mechanically, her mind still in the corral with the shaking mustang. After a few minutes of Carlos's monologue, Abuela Rosa held up a hand for silence. Enough, Mijo. Eat your breakfast before it gets cold. She turned to Maya, her expression growing serious. I called Maria Gutierrez last night after you went to bed. Maria's daughter works at the veterinary clinic in town. She is going to ask about someone coming to look at the horse, maybe someone who will not charge too much. Maya's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Abuela, I can't ask you to pay for a vet. I'll figure something out. Her grandmother's eyebrow arched in that way that brooked no argument. You will figure something out, yes. But the horse needs to be seen by someone who knows what they are looking at. Those legs, Mija, they are not normal. There might be pain we cannot see. She paused, choosing her words carefully. You have taken responsibility for this animal. That means you do not get to look away from the hard parts just because they cost money. The words hit Maya harder than any lecture about foolishness or financial irresponsibility would have. Her grandmother was right. Buying Ember had been the easy part, an impulsive choice driven by emotion. The hard part was what came next, the daily grind of care, the difficult decisions about treatment and quality of life, the reality that good intentions did not magically translate into good outcomes. Maya set down her fork, her appetite vanishing. What if the vet says she's suffering? What if the kindest thing is to... She could not finish the sentence. Abuela Rosa reached across the table and squeezed Maya's hand, her grip still strong despite her age. Then we will deal with that when we hear it. But do not borrow tomorrow's pain today. Eat your breakfast. You will need your strength. After breakfast, Maya helped Abuela Rosa with the dishes while Carlos was dispatched to collect eggs from the neighbor's chickens. a chore arrangement they had that provided them with fresh eggs in exchange for Carlos's labor and his endless enthusiasm for chicken-related facts. The kitchen window looked out over the yard, and Maya found her eyes drawn again and again to the corral where Ember stood, still in that same spot against the far wall. "She has not moved," Maya observed, scrubbing at a stubborn spot on a plate. Abuela Rosa glanced out the window. "She will when she is ready. Wild things need time to understand they are safe. You cannot rush trust, Mija. It grows like desert flowers, slowly and only when conditions are right." Maya finished the dishes and went back outside, this time carrying a bucket of fresh water. The trough needed to be cleaned again after yesterday's frantic drinking had stirred up all the settled debris. She approached the corral slowly, talking in a low, steady stream of consciousness that was less about the words and more about the tone. "Hey Ember, I'm just going to change your water, okay? Nothing scary. Just cleaning things up a bit. You must be so tired." "I know I am. I barely slept last night thinking about everything. About how we're going to make this work. About whether I made the right choice. About whether you'll ever not be terrified of me." The sound of her voice seemed to calm the mare slightly. Ember's ears, which had been pinned flat when Maya first approached, relaxed into a more neutral position. She watched Maya enter the corral and move to the water trough, her body still tense but no longer actively preparing to flee. Maya dumped the old water, watching it disappear into the thirsty ground. The desert absorbed moisture like it might never come again, which was not far from the truth. Rain was a rare visitor in this part of Nevada, a special occasion that people celebrated when it arrived. Maya scrubbed the inside of the trough with an old brush, removing the algae film and dirt that had accumulated. She worked slowly, deliberately, aware that every movement was being catalogued by the horse behind her. This was part of the dance of trust, showing through repeated actions that she meant no harm. Ember needed to see that Maya could approach, perform tasks, and leave without ever threatening her. Eventually, theoretically, that pattern would sink in and override the mare's instinct to flee. She filled the trough with fresh water from the hose, the sound of it splashing musical in the morning quiet. When she finished, she moved back toward the gate but paused, crouching down in the dirt about 10 feet from where Ember stood. The mare tensed at this change in behavior, uncertain what this meant. Maya made herself as small as possible, arms wrapped around her knees, and simply waited. Time moved differently in the desert. Without the artificial markers of schedules and appointments, it flowed more like water than sand, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, always following the path of least resistance. Maya let herself fall into that timeless space, focusing on her breathing, on the warmth of the sun now fully risen, on the subtle sounds of Ember's breath and the creak of the windmill. After what might have been 15 minutes or 45, Ember took a step forward. Then another. She approached Maya with extreme caution, neck stretched out, nostrils flaring. Maya kept her eyes downcast, non-threatening, letting the mare investigate at her own pace. Ember came close enough that Maya could feel the warmth radiating from her body, could smell the scent of horse that was equal parts hay and sweat and wild places. The mare's muzzle touched the top of Maya's head, snuffling through her dark hair. Maya smiled but did not move. Ember explored her shoulders, her back, seemingly satisfied that this human was not an immediate threat. Then, miracle of small miracles, the mare settled her weight and stood beside Maya, close enough to touch, choosing proximity over distance. They remained like that until the heat became oppressive, until sweat dripped down Maya's spine, and she knew she needed to move or risk heatstroke. She stood slowly, and Ember shifted but did not bolt. "Progress," Maya whispered. "That's progress." She left the corral and headed inside for water and shade, but the image of Ember choosing to stand near her, that stayed vivid behind her eyes. By mid-afternoon, the temperature had climbed above 100 degrees. The desert landscape wavered in the heat, and even the lizards had retreated to whatever cool places they could find. Maya stood under the cottonwood trees' inadequate shade, watching Ember in the corral. The mare had finally moved to the other side where a sliver of shadow fell from the stone wall, barely enough to protect her from the worst of the sun's assault. She stood with her head low, sides heaving slightly with each breath, clearly suffering in the heat. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her boss at Route 50 diner. "Can you pick up a shift tomorrow? We're short-staffed." Maya typed back a quick yes, mentally calculating that an extra shift meant an extra $40, maybe $50 with tips. Every bit helped. Another text followed immediately. "Heard you bought a horse at the auction. That true?" Maya grimaced. News traveled at light speed in a small town, especially news that involved someone doing something perceived as foolish. She typed back, "Yeah, it's true." The response was almost instant. "Bring pictures. The whole diner is talking about it." "Great," Maya muttered. Just what she needed to be the subject of gossip and speculation. But she supposed it was inevitable. In a town where everyone knew everyone, privacy was a luxury that did not exist. Carlos came out of the house with 2 popsicles, cherry red and already melting in the heat. He handed one to Maya without a word, and they stood together under the cottonwood tree, eating their popsicles and watching Ember. "You think she's hot?" Carlos asked around a mouthful of ice. Maya nodded. "Yeah, she's probably miserable. Horses don't handle heat as well as people do, especially if they're stressed." Carlos considered this. "We should get her one of those misting fans, like the ones at the fair." Maya smiled at his optimism. "Those cost money, Hermanito. Money we don't have right now, but I'll figure something out. Maybe we can rig up some shade cloth over part of the corral. That would help." Carlos brightened at being included in the solution. "I can help. I'm really good at building stuff." His track record suggested otherwise, but Maya appreciated the enthusiasm. As evening finally brought some relief from the heat, Maya returned to the corral with a flake of hay. It was the last of what Abuela Rosa had saved, which meant tomorrow Maya would need to figure out where to buy more and how to pay for it. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight's problem was getting Ember to eat. The mare had not touched the hay from this morning, and Maya was starting to worry. Horses needed to eat regularly, their digestive systems designed for almost constant grazing. Going too long without food could cause serious health issues. She placed the fresh hay in a corner of the corral and backed away, settling herself on the ground at a respectful distance. Ember watched her warily but made no move toward the food. "Come on," Maya coaxed softly. "I know you're hungry. I can hear your stomach from here. It's okay. Nobody's gonna hurt you while you eat." The standoff continued as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Maya's stomach growled, reminding her that she had skipped lunch in her worry over Ember. But she remained still, waiting, hoping that hunger would eventually override fear. Finally, as the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Ember moved. She approached the hay with mincing steps, her twisted legs making the short distance seem like a marathon. She sniffed the hay suspiciously, then took a small bite, then another. Relief flooded through Maya so intensely she felt tears prick her eyes. Such a small thing, a horse eating hay. But in this moment it felt like a victory. Maya's alarm shrieked at 4:30 in the morning, dragging her from dreams where horses ran with perfect legs across endless mountains. She slapped at her phone until silence returned, then lay in the darkness listening to the house settle around her. Today was her shift at Route 50 diner, which meant she needed to feed Ember, shower, and be at work by 6 for the breakfast rush. Her body protested as she swung her legs out of bed, muscles aching from the previous day's tension and the awkward positions she had held while trying to earn Ember's trust. The house was dark and quiet as she moved through it, careful not to wake Carlos or Abuela Rosa. In the kitchen, she grabbed a banana and stuffed it in her pocket, then filled a travel mug with yesterday's coffee reheated in the microwave. The back door creaked as she opened it, and the pre-dawn air hit her face, still cool but promising heat to come. She crossed the yard to the corral, where Ember's shape was barely visible against the lightning sky. The mare's head came up as Maya approached, alert but not panicked. Progress, Maya thought. Yesterday Ember would have been pressed against the far wall at the first sound of footsteps. "Good morning," Maya called softly as she climbed over the fence. "I know it's early, but I've got to work today. Just bringing you breakfast." She had managed to scrounge together enough hay for another day by calling Mrs. Chen, who ran the feed store on the edge of town. Mrs. Chen had agreed to front her a small bale on credit, news that had arrived via text message last night and had allowed Maya to finally fall asleep. The hay was old, from last year's cutting, but it was food and that was what mattered. Maya shook out the flakes in the corner where Ember had eaten last night, establishing a routine. Horses thrived on routine, she knew. Predictability helped them feel safe. Ember waited until Maya had backed away before approaching the hay. She ate with more confidence than yesterday, though her ears still swiveled constantly, monitoring for threats. Maya watched for a few minutes, then checked the water trough. Still plenty of water. Good. She would need to clean it again tonight, but for now it was adequate. She gave Ember one last look, then headed back inside to get ready for work. The shower was lukewarm, the water heater struggling as always, but Maya barely noticed. Her mind was already at the diner, calculating how many tables she would need to turn, how charming she would need to be to maximize tips, how much closer each dollar would bring her to keeping Ember fed. Route 50 Diner sat at the intersection of the highway and Main Street, a low building with turquoise trim and a neon sign that had flickered for as long as Maya could remember. The parking lot was already half full when she arrived. Pickup trucks and sedans belonging to ranchers and construction workers and early morning travelers passing through on their way to somewhere else. Maya parked her ancient Honda Civic, a car held together by duct tape and optimism, and hurried inside. The blast of air conditioning hit her like a wall, and the smell of coffee and bacon grease wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. She had worked here for 2 years, ever since turning 14 and getting her work permit, and the diner felt like a second home, one that paid her in cash and leftover pie. "Hey Maya," called Linda from behind the counter. Linda was the head waitress, a woman in her 50s with bleached blonde hair teased into a style that had been popular in the 80s and apparently still was in her mind. She wore too much blue eyeshadow and smoked too many cigarettes on her breaks, but she was kind to Maya and covered for her when she was running late. "You ready for the breakfast rush?" Maya tied her apron around her waist and grabbed an order pad from the stack by the register. "As ready as I'll ever be." Linda grinned, showing the gap between her front teeth. "I heard you did something crazy at the auction. Bought yourself a wild horse with messed up legs?" Maya felt her cheeks flush. News really did travel faster than light in this town. "Yeah, I did." Linda studied her for a moment, then shrugged. "Well, you've always marched to your own drum. Just like your mama. God rest her. Now get out there before table 4 starts throwing sugar packets." The morning rush was exactly that, a rush. Maya moved through the diner on autopilot, taking orders and delivering plates of eggs and pancakes and biscuits with gravy. She smiled until her face hurt, laughed at jokes that were not funny, and pocketed tips that ranged from generous to insulting. By 9 o'clock, the rush had slowed to a manageable stream, and Maya allowed herself a 30-second break to lean against the wall by the kitchen and catch her breath. That was when Jessica Hartwell walked in. Maya's stomach dropped. Jessica was the last person she wanted to see right now or ever really. Jessica moved through the world with the confidence of someone who had never been told no, never been denied anything she wanted. She was beautiful in the way that money could buy, with professionally highlighted hair and clothing that probably cost more than Maya made in a month. She was also the closest thing Maya had to a nemesis, though that word felt too dramatic for what was really just typical high school social hierarchy. Jessica spotted Maya immediately and made a beeline for the counter, sliding onto a stool with practiced grace. Her 2 friends, Madison and Brittany, flanked her like matching bookends. All 3 were dressed in riding clothes, breeches and boots that announced they had just come from or were heading to Hartwell Estates. Maya approached with her order pad, her smile feeling like plastic stretched too thin. "Hi, Jessica. What can I get you?" Jessica looked up at her with eyes that sparkled with something that might have been amusement or might have been cruelty. "Hi, Maya. I heard the craziest rumor yesterday. Someone said you bought a horse at the auction. That can't be true, right?" Her voice dripped with false concern, the kind of tone mean girls had perfected since the beginning of time. Maya kept her expression neutral. "It's true. I bought a mustang mare. Jessica's eyebrows shot up in exaggerated surprise. Oh wow, really? She glanced at her friends, who giggled on cue. That's so brave of you. I mean, horses are a huge responsibility. And expensive. Do you even know how to take care of a horse? Maya's grip tightened on her order pad. I work at the stables on weekends. I know enough. Jessica's smile sharpened. Oh, that's right, you muck stalls. That's totally the same as actually owning a horse. Madison leaned forward, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I heard the horse has something wrong with its legs. That's so sad. Are you going to have to put it down? Maya felt anger rising in her chest, hot and dangerous. She forced it down, refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her lose her composure. Ember's legs are different, but that doesn't mean she needs to be put down. She's a fighter. Brittany snorted. Ember? You named it Ember? That's so. She paused, searching for the word. Rustic. Jessica laughed. A sound like wind chimes that somehow managed to be condescending. Well, I think it's sweet that you're trying to save it. Really, I do. It's just, her voice took on that false concern again. Horses like that don't usually have great quality of life. And the costs add up so fast. Vet bills, farrier, feed. I'm just worried you're getting in over your head. Maya met her eyes directly. Thanks for your concern, Jessica, but Ember and I will be fine. Now, what can I get you? The dismissal was clear, and for a moment Jessica's mask slipped, showing genuine annoyance underneath. Then she recovered, her smile snapping back into place. Just 3 iced lattes. Thanks so much. Maya retreated to the coffee station, her hands shaking slightly as she prepared the drinks. She could hear Jessica and her friends whispering and giggling, and she knew with certainty they were talking about her. Linda appeared at her elbow, her voice low. Don't let those girls get to you. They've had everything handed to them their whole lives. They don't understand what it means to fight for something. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She delivered the lattes with mechanical efficiency, and Jessica paid with her father's credit card, leaving exactly $0 for a tip. As they left, Jessica called over her shoulder, loud enough for half the diner to hear, "Good luck with your project horse, Maya. Let me know if you need any hand-me-down tack." The door closed behind them, and Maya stood frozen, humiliation burning through her veins. Around the diner, conversations had paused, people looking at her with expressions ranging from pity to amusement. Linda squeezed her shoulder. Ignore them. You did a good thing saving that horse. Maya nodded again, blinking back tears she refused to shed in public. She threw herself back into work, taking orders and clearing tables with fierce determination. By the time her shift ended at 2, she had made $63 in tips, a small fortune that would buy hay for another week. But the encounter with Jessica had left a sour taste in her mouth that no amount of money could wash away. She drove home with the windows down, letting the hot wind blast away the air conditioning chill and hopefully some of the afternoon's toxicity. The desert stretched endlessly on either side of the highway, sagebrush and scrub dotting the landscape like a million small survivors. Maya had always loved the desert, the way it refused to apologize for being harsh, the way it made beauty out of scarcity. Her mother had loved it too. They used to drive out to the far edges of nowhere and sit on the hood of the car, watching the sun set and talking about everything and nothing. Those memories lived in Maya's chest like pressed flowers, fragile but permanent. When she pulled into the driveway, she found Carlos sitting on the porch steps with his chin in his hands, looking dejected. She killed the engine and walked over to him. "What's wrong, Hermanito?" Carlos looked up at her with eyes that glistened with unshed tears. "Some kids at day camp said Ember is going to die because her legs are broken and that you wasted your money. They said we're stupid for trying to save her." Maya's heart cracked a little. She sat down next to Carlos and put her arm around his skinny shoulders. "Those kids don't know what they're talking about. Ember's legs aren't broken. They're just shaped differently. And yeah, it's going to be hard work and cost money, but that doesn't make it stupid. Sometimes the right thing is hard. That doesn't mean we don't do it." Carlos leaned into her. "But what if they're right? What if she does die?" Maya chose her words carefully. "Then at least she'll die knowing someone cared enough to try. That matters," Carlos. It matters to her and it matters to us. We can't control everything that happens, but we can control how we show up. Carlos was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, in a small voice, I really want her to be okay. Me too, Maya whispered. Me too. They sat together on the porch steps, watching Ember through the corral fence. The mare stood in the sliver of shade, head low, resting. She looked peaceful, or at least less terrified than she had 2 days ago. That had to count for something. Abuela Rosa called them in for a late lunch of quesadillas and fruit. They ate at the kitchen table, Carlos slowly regaining his usual energy and beginning to chatter about a lizard he had caught and released 17 times. Abuela Rosa listened with patient attention, but her eyes kept drifting to Maya, concerned. After lunch, while Carlos went outside to hunt for more lizards, Abuela Rosa pulled Maya aside. Maria's daughter called. The veterinarian will come tomorrow afternoon to look at the horse. His name is Dr. Sullivan. He is supposed to be good with difficult cases. Maya felt relief and terror in equal measure. Tomorrow they would have answers, which meant tomorrow they might have to face truths she was not ready to hear. How much will it cost? Abuela Rosa's expression was carefully neutral. He will tell us tomorrow. But Maya, you need to prepare yourself. The vet might say things you do not want to hear. Maya nodded, her throat tight. I know, but I have to try, Abuela. I have to at least try. Her grandmother's face softened. I know, Mija. You are so much like your mother. She also could not walk past suffering without stopping to help. It is a beautiful thing and a hard thing. Maya spent the rest of the afternoon with Ember, sitting in the corral while the mare gradually grew comfortable enough to eat hay while Maya was present. It was slow work, this building of trust, but Maya found it almost meditative. There was something about the simplicity of it, the clear cause and effect, that made sense in a way nothing else in her life did. If she was patient, if she was consistent, if she proved herself safe over and over, eventually Ember would believe her. It was not complicated by social hierarchies or hidden meanings or the 1,000 ways human relationships could twist into knots. It was honest. As the sun began its descent, painting the desert in shades of amber and rose, Maya heard the sound of a vehicle approaching. She looked up to see an unfamiliar truck pulling into the driveway, a blue Ford with a topper on the back. The truck parked, and a man climbed out, tall and lean with the kind of weathered face that spoke of decades spent outdoors. He wore jeans and a faded button-down shirt, and a baseball cap shaded his eyes. He stood for a moment, surveying the property, then walked toward the corral where Maya sat. She stood up, suddenly self-conscious about her dusty clothes and the fact that she was sitting in the dirt with a wild horse. The man reached the fence and tipped his hat. You must be Maya. I'm Tom Sullivan. Heard you might need some help with a horse. Maya blinked in confusion. The vet was supposed to come tomorrow. Dr. Sullivan smiled, the expression crinkling the corners of his eyes. I'm not a vet. I'm a farrier. Been working with horses for about 35 years now. Maria Gutierrez mentioned you had a Mustang with leg issues, and I thought I'd stop by on my way home, see if there's anything I can do to help. Maya's confusion must have shown on her face because Tom continued, I don't charge for consultations. Just like to see the situation before I commit to taking on a case. Sometimes there's nothing to be done, and I'd rather tell you that straight up than waste your money. Maya felt something loosen in her chest. Kindness from a stranger was so unexpected it almost hurt. Thank you. That's thank you. I really appreciate it. Tom nodded toward Ember, who had retreated to the far corner of the corral at his arrival. Tell me about her. Where'd she come from? Maya explained the auction, the laughter, the impulse that had driven her to bid. Tom listened without interrupting, his eyes on Ember the whole time. When Maya finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he climbed over the fence with an ease that belied his age and approached Ember slowly, his body language relaxed and unthreatening. Ember tensed but did not bolt, perhaps sensing something different about this human. Tom stopped several feet away and crouched down, making himself smaller. Hey there, sweetheart, he murmured. You've had a rough go of it, haven't you? Let's see if we can make things a little easier. What happened next seemed almost miraculous to Maya. Tom stayed crouched, not approaching further, just existing in Ember's space with a patience that felt infinite. After several minutes, Ember took a tentative step toward him. Then another. Tom remained perfectly still, barely breathing, letting the mare come to him entirely on her own terms. When Ember's muzzle finally touched his outstretched hand, Tom smiled. "Good girl. You're a brave one, aren't you?" He stood slowly, and Ember allowed him to run his hands down her neck, over her shoulders, assessing her body with the practiced touch of someone who had evaluated thousands of horses. When he reached her front legs, he took his time, carefully palpating the twisted bones, checking her joints, examining her hooves. Finally, Tom straightened and walked back to where Maya stood at the fence. His expression was serious but not grim. "All right, here's what I can tell you. Those legs are definitely deformed, probably from birth or very early injury. The bones have set in that position, so we're not going to change the fundamental structure. However," Tom paused, and Maya braced herself for the devastating news she had been dreading. "However, she's not in acute pain as far as I can tell. She's compensating well, and horses are remarkably adaptable creatures. With proper hoof care and maybe some specialized shoeing, I think she can live a comfortable life. She's never going to be a barrel racer or a jumping horse, but she could be a good companion animal, maybe even handle light riding eventually." Maya felt tears spring to her eyes, relief so intense it made her knees weak. "Really? You really think she'll be okay?" Tom's smile was gentle. "I think she'll be more than okay. She's a fighter, I can see that. And she's lucky she found you. Most people would have let her go to slaughter without a second thought. Now, her hooves are a mess and we need to address that soon. Wild horses wear their hooves down naturally by covering lots of ground. But in a corral she's not getting that natural wear. I can come back next week and do a proper trim, see about getting her set up with some corrective shoeing. It's going to take time, probably several sessions to get her hooves where they need to be, but we'll get there." Maya wiped at her eyes, not even embarrassed by the tears. "How much will it cost?" Tom considered. "Well, normally I charge $80 for a trim, but I'll tell you what, you help me with the process, hold her and learn how it's done, and I'll do it for $50. I believe in teaching folks how to care for their own animals when possible. Plus," he added with a wink, "Maria Gutierrez makes the best tamales in the county, and she's promised me a dozen if I help you out. So really, I'm being bribed with food." Maya laughed, the sound coming out half-sob. "That's the best news I've heard in days. Thank you so much, Mr. Sullivan." "Tom," he corrected. "Just Tom. And you're welcome. It's good to see young people taking responsibility for animals that need help. Not enough of that in the world." They talked for a few more minutes, Tom giving Maya advice on Ember's care, what to watch for, how to continue building trust. When he finally climbed back in his truck and drove away, Maya stood in the driveway feeling lighter than she had since the auction. Ember was going to be okay. Not perfect, not healed in some magical way, but okay. That was enough. That was more than enough. She went inside to share the news with Abuela Rosa and Carlos, who whooped with joy and immediately began planning all the things Ember would be able to do once her hooves were fixed. Abuela Rosa smiled and touched Maya's cheek. "You see, Mija, sometimes help comes from unexpected places. You just have to be brave enough to accept it." That night, after dinner and dishes, after Carlos had been tucked into bed still talking about Ember, Maya returned to the corral one last time. The desert night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky like someone had spilled diamonds. Ember stood in the center of the corral, and when Maya climbed over the fence, the mare walked toward her instead of away. It was a small thing, this choice to approach instead of retreat, but it felt monumental. Maya held out her hand, and Ember pressed her muzzle into it, breathing warm breath across Maya's palm. "We're going to be okay," Maya whispered into the darkness. "Both of us. We're going to be okay." The veterinarian arrived exactly at 2 o'clock the following afternoon, driving a white truck with a veterinary clinic logo on the door. Dr. Marcus Chun was younger than Maya expected, maybe in his early 30s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an easy manner that immediately put her at ease. He shook her hand firmly when she met him in the driveway, his grip professional but warm. "You must be Maya. I've heard quite a bit about you and your mare from Maria Gutierrez. She speaks very highly of your dedication. Maya felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. Thank you for coming, Dr. Chun. I know you're probably busy. He waved off her concern as he pulled a medical bag from his truck. Call me Marcus, please, and I always make time for cases like this. Horses that need advocates, that's what drew me to veterinary medicine in the first place. He followed Maya to the corral where Ember waited, and Maya noticed how he paused at the fence to assess the mare before entering. His eyes taking in every detail of her stance, her body condition, the way she held her weight. Tom Sullivan called me last night, Marcus said conversationally. Gave me a heads up about what to expect. He thinks quite highly of her spirit. Says she's a survivor. That's a good sign. They spent the next hour conducting a thorough examination. Marcus worked with the same patience Tom had shown, never rushing, always explaining what he was doing and why. He checked Ember's teeth, which revealed she was likely closer to 5 years old than 4. He listened to her heart and lungs, palpated her abdomen, examined her eyes and ears. Maya held Ember's lead rope throughout, murmuring constant reassurance to the mare, who tolerated the examination with remarkable composure considering she had been wild just days ago. When Marcus moved to the legs, his examination became more detailed. He had Maya walk Ember in a straight line, then in a circle, watching carefully how the mare moved, where she placed her weight, how the twisted bones affected her gait. Finally, Marcus stepped back and pulled off his latex gloves. All right, let's talk about what I'm seeing. He gestured for Maya to sit on the fence rail while he leaned against the post beside her. First, the good news. Her vital signs are strong. Heart and lungs sound excellent. No signs of parasites, though I'd recommend a deworming protocol. Her teeth need some attention. There's some sharp points that are probably causing discomfort when she eats, but that's easily fixable. Overall body condition is poor, but that's expected given her background. With proper nutrition, she'll fill out nicely. He paused, and Maya braced herself for the other shoe to drop. Now the legs. The deformity is permanent. We're dealing with bones that grew incorrectly, either from genetics or developmental issues. Surgery to correct them would be extremely expensive. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars, and there's no guarantee of success. In fact, it could make things worse. Maya's heart sank. So there's nothing we can do? Marcus held up a hand. I didn't say that. What I'm saying is we can't fix the deformity itself, but we can absolutely manage it. Tom's right that proper hoof care is going to be crucial. We need to balance her hooves in a way that compensates for the leg angles, takes pressure off her joints. I'd also recommend some anti-inflammatory supplements, maybe some joint support as she ages. With proper management, I see no reason she can't live a full, comfortable life. She won't be winning any races, but she can absolutely be ridden lightly, be a companion, live out in a pasture. The key is staying on top of her care and not asking her to do things her body isn't built for. Relief flooded through Maya so powerfully she felt dizzy. So she's not suffering? She can actually have a good quality of life? Marcus smiled. She's not suffering. Is she dealing with a disability? Yes. But horses are incredibly adaptable. I've seen 3-legged horses live happy lives. I've seen blind horses navigate pastures like they have GPS. This mare has the will to live. I can see it in her eyes. With you as her advocate, she's going to do just fine. He pulled out a notebook and started writing. I'm going to leave you with some instructions for her care. Deworming schedule, dietary recommendations, supplements I want you to start. I'll also send over some information about low-cost spay and neuter clinics. Wait, Maya interrupted, confused. Spay? Marcus laughed. Sorry, force of habit. I work mostly with small animals. But the principle is the same. There are resources available to help with costs. I know a feed store that gives discounts to rescue cases. I'll send you their information. They spent another 20 minutes going over care instructions, and when Marcus finally packed up his equipment, he refused to take payment. This one's on me, he said when Maya tried to hand him the money she had set aside. Consider it my contribution to a good cause. But here's my card. If anything changes, if she seems uncomfortable or you have questions, call me. Day or night. Maya clutched the card like it was made of gold. Thank you, She managed through the lump in her throat. You have no idea how much this means. Marcus's expression turned serious. Actually, I think I do. I grew up without much money, worked my way through vet school with scholarships and 3 jobs. I remember what it's like to care about something and not know how you're going to afford to take care of it. Pay it forward someday when you can. That's all I ask. After Marcus left, Maya stood in the driveway feeling like the weight of the world had lifted slightly from her shoulders. Ember was going to be okay. The words played on repeat in her mind like a song. She went inside to update Abuela Rosa, who was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Her grandmother listened to the vet's assessment while chopping vegetables for soup, her knife moving with practiced precision. This is good news, Mija. God provides. Maya wanted to point out that it was not God but rather the kindness of strangers that was providing, but she kept the thought to herself. If faith helped her grandmother make sense of the world, who was Maya to argue? That evening, after a dinner of albondigas soup and fresh bread, Maya returned to the corral with a curry comb she had borrowed from the stables where she worked. It was time to start addressing Ember's appearance, to begin the long process of transforming her from a terrified wild thing into something resembling a cared-for horse. She entered the corral slowly, the curry comb held loosely in her hand where Ember could see it. The mare watched her approach with interest rather than fear, a shift that made Maya's chest tight with emotion. "Hey girl," Maya murmured. "Want to get some of this dirt off? You'll feel better, I promise." She started at Ember's shoulder, the curry comb making small circles against the grain of the coat, loosening dirt and dead hair. Ember tensed at first, and used to the sensation, but after a moment she relaxed, even leaning slightly into the pressure. Maya worked slowly, methodically, covering every inch of the mare's body she could reach. The curry comb filled with hair and grime, and Maya paused frequently to clean it, watching the pile of debris grow. It was therapeutic, this simple act of grooming. There was something deeply satisfying about revealing the true color of Ember's coat, watching it transform from dull and matted to something that actually gleamed in the fading light. When she reached Ember's mane, Maya realized she had a much bigger job ahead of her. The mane was tangled into thick sections that would need to be carefully separated and detangled, probably over several sessions. But she made a start, working her fingers through the ends, loosening burrs and dead vegetation. Ember stood quietly through it all, occasionally turning her head to snuffle at Maya's shoulder, as if checking to make sure this was still the same human who had brought her hay and water. The sun set while they worked together, the desert sky putting on its nightly show of orange and pink and purple. Carlos came out to watch, sitting on the fence rail and providing running commentary. "She looks so much better already, Maya. You're like a horse beautician." Maya laughed. "Beautician isn't really a thing for horses, but thanks." By the time full darkness fell and Maya's arms ached from the grooming, Ember looked almost transformed. Her coat, while still dull from malnutrition, had a hint of the rich russet color that would emerge with proper feeding. The worst of the dirt was gone, revealing the scars and imperfections underneath, but also revealing the basic structure of what could be a beautiful horse. Maya stepped back to admire her work, and Ember shook herself, as if testing out this new, cleaner version of herself. "You're gorgeous," Maya told her. "I hope you know that. All those people who laughed at you, they couldn't see what I see. But they will. Somehow they will." The next few days fell into a rhythm. Maya woke early to feed Ember before school, rushed home after classes to spend time with her before her shifts at the diner, and ended each day with grooming sessions in the corral. Slowly, incrementally, Ember transformed. The fear in her eyes diminished, replaced by something that looked almost like curiosity. She began meeting Maya at the gate instead of hiding in the far corner. She allowed Carlos to pet her nose through the fence rails, his small hand gentle as he whispered secrets to her about lizards and his favorite video games. Even Abuela Rosa softened, bringing out apple slices from the kitchen and watching with quiet approval as Ember accepted them from Maya's palm. On Saturday morning, Tom Sullivan returned as promised. He arrived with his truck bed full of farrier tools and a patient manner that immediately calmed everyone's nerves. Maya had been dreading this, worried about how Ember would react to having her hooves handled, but Tom made it look easy. He worked with Ember for over an hour, first just touching her legs, then picking up her hooves for brief moments, gradually building up her tolerance. When he finally began the actual trimming, Ember fidgeted but did not fight. Tom talked to her the whole time, his voice a low, soothing rumble. "There we go, sweetheart. I know it feels weird, but we're helping you. You're gonna walk so much easier when we're done." Maya watched in fascination as Tom shaped Ember's hooves, cutting away the overgrown sections, balancing each hoof carefully to compensate for the twisted leg angles. It was an art as much as a science, requiring an understanding of physics and anatomy and the specific needs of this particular horse. When he finished with all 4 hooves, he straightened and wiped sweat from his forehead. "There. That's going to make a world of difference. You'll see her moving more comfortably within a few days." Now, he continued, pulling out a notebook, "I want you to watch her closely. If she seems more lame instead of less, if she's reluctant to put weight on any hoof, call me immediately. We might need to adjust the balance. But I think we've got it pretty close to ideal." True to Tom's prediction, within 2 days Ember was moving noticeably better. The awkward, painful-looking gait smoothed out slightly, though she would never move like a horse with straight legs. But there was less hesitation in her steps, less obvious discomfort. Maya celebrated this small victory by spending an entire afternoon working with Ember on basic ground manners, teaching her to lead properly, to stand still when asked, to back up on command. The mare was intelligent, picking up on cues quickly, and Maya began to let herself imagine a future where Ember was not just a rescue case but a trained, rideable horse. The second week of September brought the first hint of cooling temperatures, the brutal August heat finally beginning to break. Maya was working the lunch shift at Route 50 Diner when Jessica Hartwell walked in again, this time alone. Maya's stomach tightened, but she approached the table with her order pad and her professional smile. "Hi, Jessica. What can I get you?" Jessica looked up from her phone, and something in her expression was different. Less sharp, maybe, or more uncertain. "Hey, Maya, can I get a burger and fries? And actually," she hesitated, "can I talk to you for a minute? When you have time." Maya blinked, surprised. "Sure. Let me put your order in and I'll come back." She delivered the order to the kitchen, her mind racing. What could Jessica possibly want to talk about? When she returned to the table, Jessica gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit? Just for a second?" Maya glanced around the diner. It was a slow period, only a few tables occupied. She slid into the booth across from Jessica, feeling awkward in her grease-stained apron. Jessica fidgeted with her phone case, not meeting Maya's eyes. "Look, I wanted to apologize. For the other day, when I came in with Madison and Brittany, I was really mean about your horse. That wasn't cool." Maya was so shocked she could not immediately respond. An apology from Jessica Hartwell was about as likely as snow in the desert. Jessica continued, words coming faster now. "I've been thinking about it, and honestly, what you did was brave. Everyone at that auction was laughing and you didn't care. You just did what you thought was right. That takes guts. I'm not sure I would have done the same thing." Maya found her voice. "Thank you. I appreciate you saying that." Jessica finally looked up, and there was genuine emotion in her eyes. "My dad heard about it. About the horse with the twisted legs that nobody wanted. And he told me I should learn something from you. He said it's easy to love things that are perfect, but character shows in how you treat things that are broken." Maya felt something shift in her chest. She had spent 2 years seeing Jessica as nothing more than a mean girl, a caricature of privilege and cruelty. But sitting across from her now, Maya saw something else. Uncertainty. The pressure of living up to expectations. The burden of being Richard Hartwell's daughter, of representing a family legacy. Maybe Jessica was not so different from Ember, not so different from Maya herself, trapped in a shape others had decided for her, trying to figure out who she was underneath the expectations. "Your dad sounds wise," Maya said carefully. Jessica laughed, but it was not her usual performative laugh. It was something more real. "He can be, when he's not being impossible." She paused, then asked, "How is your horse?" "Ember, right? She's doing really well, actually." Maya could not keep the pride from her voice. "Her hooves have been trimmed, and she's moving so much better. She's gaining weight, getting shinier." And she's learning fast. I've been teaching her basic groundwork, and she picks things up like she's been trained her whole life. Jessica smiled, and it looked genuine. That's really cool, Maya. Seriously, if you ever want help with her, or need anything, let me know. We have extra tack at the ranch, blankets and stuff. I could probably convince my dad to donate some things. The offer was so unexpected Maya almost did not know how to respond. That would be amazing. Thank you, Jessica. Really. When Jessica left 20 minutes later, after eating her burger and leaving a generous tip, Maya sat at the table for a moment longer, processing what had just happened. An olive branch, an unexpected alliance, maybe even the beginning of something resembling friendship. The world was full of surprises, apparently. She returned to work with lighter steps, and when her shift ended, she drove home thinking about how people, like horses, were rarely as simple as they seemed on the surface. That evening, as Maya groomed Ember in the corral, she told the mare about the unexpected conversation. "You're already changing things," she murmured, working the brush through Ember's mane. "You're teaching people to see differently, including me." The third week of September brought an invitation that changed everything. Maya was checking her email before bed when she saw it. A message from the Sage County Fair coordinator. The subject line read, "Special Exhibition Opportunity." Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. "Dear Ms. Rodriguez, we heard about your rescue of the Mustang mare from last month's auction and were touched by your dedication to giving her a second chance. We would like to invite you and Ember to participate in a special exhibition at this year's Sage County Fair. This would be a non-competitive demonstration, simply a chance to show the community what's possible with patience and compassion. We believe your story would inspire others to consider adopting horses with special needs. Please let us know if you would be interested. The fair is 4 weeks away." Maya read the email 3 times, her heart pounding. The Sage County Fair, the biggest event of the year, where everyone from the entire county gathered, where Jessica and the Hartwells would be competing in the prestigious reining competition, where Maya would be on display, vulnerable to judgment and mockery, with Ember beside her for everyone to see. The thought terrified her, but it also thrilled her in a way she could not quite name. This was a chance to show everyone what Ember had become. A chance to prove that the horse they had laughed at deserved respect. A chance to maybe, possibly, change some minds about what made a horse valuable. She did not make the decision alone. The next morning, she gathered Abuela Rosa and Carlos at the kitchen table and showed them the email. Carlos's reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "You have to do it. You have to show everyone how amazing Ember is." Abuela Rosa was more cautious. "Mija, are you ready for this? The fair means many eyes watching. Some will be kind, but others," Maya knew what her grandmother was not saying. "Others would be cruel. Others would come to watch her fail, to confirm their belief that she had wasted her money on a worthless horse." But when she thought about Ember, about how far the mare had come in just 3 weeks, about the fire that still burned in her dark eyes, Maya knew what her answer had to be. "I have to try," she said simply. "Even if we fail, even if people laugh, I have to try." Abuela Rosa studied her granddaughter's face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then you have our support. We will help you prepare." That afternoon, Maya sat in the corral with Ember, the acceptance email already sent. For weeks, they had 4 weeks to prepare for the biggest moment of their lives. The mare stood beside her, close enough that Maya could feel her warmth, and rested her muzzle on Maya's shoulder, a gesture of trust that still made tears spring to Maya's eyes. "We're really doing this," Maya whispered. "You and me, we're gonna show them all." Ember exhaled softly, her breath warm against Maya's neck, and in that moment it felt less like a promise and more like a vow. They were in this together, girl and horse, 2 beings the world had dismissed, about to step into the light and demand to be seen. The acceptance email sat in Maya's inbox like a ticking clock, a constant reminder that in 4 weeks she would be standing in front of the entire county with Ember beside her. For weeks to transform a wild mustang who had been terrified of human touch into something presentable enough for public display. For weeks to prove that her impulsive decision at the auction had been more than just naive charity. The weight of it pressed on her shoulders as she drove to school Monday morning, her mind already calculating everything that needed to happen between now and the fair. Desert Vista High School loomed before her, a sprawling single-story building that baked in the sun like everything else in Nevada. Maya parked in her usual spot at the far end of the lot, the place where the older cars and the students who preferred invisibility congregated. She grabbed her backpack and headed toward her first period class, already dreading the social minefield that high school represented. But something had shifted over the weekend. As Maya walked through the hallway, she noticed people looking at her differently. Some stared with open curiosity, others whispered to their friends as she passed. By lunch, she understood why. Someone had posted about her and Ember on social media, a photo of them together in the corral that Carlos must have taken without her knowledge. The caption read, "Local girl saves wild horse rejected at auction," and it had been shared hundreds of times. Maya slid into her usual spot in the library, hoping to eat lunch in peace, but within minutes she was surrounded by classmates asking questions. Is it true the horse has deformed legs? Are you really going to be at the fair? Can we come see her? The attention was overwhelming, a sharp contrast to the invisibility she had carefully cultivated. She answered questions as best she could, feeling exposed and vulnerable in a way that made her skin crawl. When Jessica Hartwell appeared in the library doorway, scanning the room until she spotted Maya, several students stepped back as if making room for a confrontation. But Jessica simply walked over and sat down across from Maya, ignoring the stunned silence that fell over their corner of the library. "I saw the post," Jessica said without preamble, "about the fair exhibition. That's really cool." Maya nodded, unsure where this conversation was heading. "Thanks. I'm pretty nervous about it, honestly." Jessica pulled out her phone and scrolled through something, then turned the screen toward Maya. "These are photos from our ranch. We have an indoor arena with good lighting, mirrors on one wall, really nice footing. If you want, you could bring Ember there to practice. Get her used to being in a different environment, working with distractions. My dad already said it's fine." Maya stared at the photos, then at Jessica, searching for the catch. "Why would you help me?" Jessica shrugged, but there was something vulnerable in the gesture. "Because maybe I want to be part of something that actually matters. All I do is compete for ribbons that will end up in a box in the garage. You're doing something real. Let me help." The offer hung in the air between them, fragile as spun glass. Maya thought about pride, about the satisfaction of doing everything alone, about proving she did not need anyone's charity. But then she thought about Ember, about giving the mare the best possible chance to succeed. This was not about Maya's ego. This was about doing right by a horse who deserved every advantage. "Okay," Maya said finally. "Yeah, that would be really helpful. Thank you." Jessica's smile was genuine, transforming her face into something warmer than Maya had ever seen. "Cool. How about Thursday after school? I'll text you the address." As Jessica walked away, Maya sat alone with her half-eaten sandwich, trying to process this new reality where Jessica Hartwell was her ally instead of her antagonist. That evening, Maya shared the news with her family over dinner. Abuela Rosa listened with her usual measured consideration, then nodded. "This is good, Mija. You cannot do everything alone, no matter how much you want to. Accepting help is not weakness." Carlos was less philosophical and more excited. "Are you going to ride Ember at the fair? Are you going to jump over things? Can I come watch you practice at the fancy ranch?" Maya held up a hand to stop the barrage of questions. "I don't know if I'll ride her at the fair. We're still working on just basic handling. And yes, you can come watch practice if Abuela says it's okay." Carlos turned pleading eyes on his grandmother, who sighed in the way that meant she was going to say yes despite her better judgment. "We will see. If your homework is done and Maya says it is appropriate." The next few days passed in a blur of school, work shifts at the diner, and intensive training sessions with Ember. Maya pushed herself to exhaustion, waking at dawn to work with the mare before school, rushing home to squeeze in another session before work, then coming home late to groom and check on her before collapsing into bed. Tom Sullivan stopped by twice more, adjusting Ember's hooves and teaching Maya how to pick them out properly, how to check for signs of thrush or abscess. Marcus Chun called to check in, and when Maya mentioned the fair exhibition, he offered to donate supplements to help Ember gain weight and improve her coat condition. The community was rallying around them in small but significant ways, and Maya felt the pressure mounting with each gesture of support. Thursday afternoon arrived faster than Maya expected. She loaded Ember into a borrowed trailer, a nerve-wracking process that took nearly an hour and ended with both of them sweating and shaking. The drive to Hartwell Estates took 20 minutes, winding through increasingly upscale neighborhoods until they reached a private road marked with a discreet sign. The ranch sprawled across what must have been 50 acres, with pristine white fencing, manicured pastures, and barns that looked like they belonged in a magazine. Maya's old Honda Civic and borrowed trailer looked ridiculous pulling up the drive, and she felt her courage faltering. This was a mistake. She did not belong here, and neither did Ember. But Jessica was waiting at the main barn, and her smile seemed genuine as she helped Maya unload Ember. The mare emerged from the trailer with wild eyes, her head high as she took in the unfamiliar surroundings. Other horses called from nearby pastures, and Ember answered with a shrill whinny that spoke of nerves and challenge. "Easy girl," Maya murmured, keeping a firm grip on the lead rope. "You're okay. We're just here to practice." Jessica led them to the indoor arena, a massive structure with a vaulted ceiling and excellent lighting just as promised. The arena floor was perfectly groomed, and mirrors ran the length of one wall. It was intimidating in its perfection, so different from the dusty corral where Maya and Ember had been working. For the first 20 minutes, all they did was walk. Maya led Ember around the perimeter of the arena, letting the mare investigate and grow comfortable with the space. Ember snorted at her own reflection in the mirrors, spooked at the sound of a horse moving in a nearby stall, but gradually settled. Jessica watched from the rail, offering quiet encouragement but not interfering. When Maya finally felt ready to try more, she asked Ember to trot beside her. The mare's gait was still awkward, her twisted legs creating an uneven rhythm, but she tried so hard that Maya's throat tightened with emotion. They worked for an hour, practicing stops and starts, direction changes, standing quietly while Maya moved around her. By the end, both were exhausted, but the session had been successful. "That was really good," Jessica said as Maya walked Ember to cool down. "She's so willing to try. You can see her thinking, trying to figure out what you want." Maya nodded, too tired for extensive conversation but grateful for the observation. As they loaded Ember back into the trailer, Jessica mentioned casually that Maya could come back anytime. "Seriously, whenever you want to practice. We have the space." The offer was generous, and Maya accepted it, recognizing that pride was a luxury she could not afford right now. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a routine. Maya brought Ember to Hartwell Estates 3 times a week, each session building on the last. Jessica often joined them in the arena, offering suggestions from her years of professional training, helping Maya refine her handling techniques. The two girls, so different in background and circumstance, found common ground in their shared respect for the horses they worked with. At home, Carlos appointed himself Ember's official cheerleader and assistant trainer. He spent hours at the corral fence, talking to the mare about his day, feeding her carrots he had negotiated from Abuela Rosa, making elaborate signs for the fair that proclaimed Ember the bravest horse in Nevada. Abuela Rosa watched her grandchildren with a mixture of pride and worry, her practical nature warring with her desire to support their dreams. She altered an old shirt of Maya's father into something more presentable for the fair, sewing on patches to cover worn spots, making sure Maya would look neat even if they could not afford new clothes. The care in those stitches spoke louder than any words of encouragement could have. The night before the fair, Maya could not sleep. She lay in bed watching shadows move across her ceiling, listening to the house settle around her, running through everything that could go wrong. Ember could spook in the crowded fairgrounds. People could laugh. The whole exhibition could be a disaster that confirmed everyone's initial assessment that she was a fool. But underneath the fear was something else, something that felt like hope mixed with determination. Whatever happened tomorrow, she and Ember would face it together. They had already survived so much. They could survive this too. She finally drifted off near dawn, dreaming of wild horses running free across mountains, their legs all perfect and straight, carrying them toward horizons that stretched forever. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.